Howdy folks, in this episode of the Smoogleville Workshop we will be reviewing this Oregon 520-120 bench chain grinder. Okay, so let's take a look at what's in the box real quick. I'm going to do the assembly on this. It looks fairly straightforward. We got the vice part there that we put to the bench. This is where the chain will be held, and this will protrude over the bench. So I'm going to mount it back here like this, and it bolts to the bench like that. And that should bring it to a nice height for me to see what's going on and be able to use it. And so we'll set this up, and then we're going to be joined by my dear friend Rob in England. This is going to be an international review. We'll be joined by him shortly. He has a great deal of experience with chainsaw sharpening. He's a wood turner, so he spends a lot of time harvesting rare and wonderful woods using a chainsaw to do that. And so as he pointed out, I've just got into chainsaws, and it really is a big mystery out there. There's a lot of stuff to learn about chainsaws, the blades, how to sharpen them. There's some terminology he's going to get us all familiar with. So the purpose of today's review is not only to look at an excellent tool for blade sharpening. As I'm told, I bought this on his recommendation, but also to step into the world of chainsaws generally and chainsaw blades and give you a lot of other useful information about the whole business of chainsaws. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is we need to mount this on the bench here, and we align it here with these points here, and then we can mark that like that. Well, I'm using a bradawl to do that, to get a center on that. Let's hold that firm and mark that one as well, and then get those bolts in there. So let's offer up one of these blades. There we go. Oh, that was very simple, very nice. I'm putting my thinnest blade on. I think that's the one I'm going to need for my chainsaw because it's got a fairly small pitch on it. All right, let's just run a quick test. Give it a quick test run to make sure that that is set correctly. Let's tighten that up. Just want to turn it on for a moment. Okay. Plug it in. Oh, no vibration, very smooth. Obviously some setting up to do here, but lovely, very good. All right, well that was easy. Okay, and so now all we need to do is get a chainsaw blade to sharpen, and I have one of those ready to go in the garage. All right folks, as promised, we are now joined by my dear friend Rob, my brother by another mother, who knows a great deal about chainsaws and has been using them for some years. He's a wood turner, so he's always harvesting wonderful exotic woods with his chainsaw, and has learned a lot in the process. And I'm just stepping into this world with the purchase of my good old battery powered 80-volt Greenworks machine that we reviewed recently, which is kind of what kicked this off. And Rob suggested I get myself the Oregon. This is the 520-120, but it's a whole science behind this, and he's going to be revealing that for us today. So welcome to the show, Rob. Good to have you with us.
Hi, mate. Nice to be here, and nice to see all the folks viewing. Or not, as in fact the case is, because of course we can't. But it's an interesting universe, that of chainsaws, and particularly chainsaw chains, because it's riddled with jargon and industry gobbledygook. And I went through this torture myself when I bought a chainsaw. I was trying to harvest wood for wood turning because it's extremely expensive. Any of you wood turners will know if you're trying to buy blanks from, retail outlets, you're looking at, in the UK, 20 quid for a relatively small bowl blank. So it really mounts up. And for the first 2 years, you're screwing them up regularly anyway. And all you create is a lot of sawdust. So to pay 20 quid for the privilege of coating a garage floor in crap is not really money well spent. So I decided to start harvesting my own stuff. And so that meant entering the world of chainsaws. And they are riddled with jargon. And so part of today is to try and help people understand and demystify some of the jargon that surrounds chainsaws and chainsaw chains. So it took me, I don't know, days, weeks even, to try and get through it. And every time you read the back of a new chain packet or a catalogue that has chainsaws in, you just are left wondering what the hell they're talking about. And I'm sure it's deliberate so that you jump in the car and go straight down to the local dealership and pay them an enormous amount of money to do what actually could be done for a hell of a lot less if you just knew what the hell to do. So this is about trying to help you to do that. And I think the best way to start is to think about a chain. If you look at a chain, I'm just going to go and grab my chainsaw. They're not that, you think it's that complicated to specify what you've got to do, because you've got to think about how long is the thing. And they tell you how long the bar is. The bar in this case on this still is 18 inches. So you know how long the bar is, but that doesn't really help you go and buy a chain. You also will notice from different chains that the thickness of the chain is sometimes different. So this dimension here is different from one chain to another. And then the other thing is, of course, you have relatively small chainsaws or mid-range chainsaws like this that are not bad for cutting small trees down and making firewood, but you couldn't go and cut down a California redwood tree with this little sucker because you wouldn't get very far. So the other thing you have in chainsaws is the head, the engine bit of it, not the chain or the bar, but the business end, is also very variable from big to small. And you have to factor that in, because the drive wheel, which is called the sprocket, the bit that the engine turns and therefore turns the chain, also has different sized teeth. So there's the length of the chain, the thickness, and how big the sprocket of the drive shaft is. Those are the three basic variables. And I wish they would just call them the length of the chain, the teeth distance in the sprocket, and the thickness of the bar, or the thickness of the chain, because then at least you'd understand it. At least you have a fighting chance to understand what the hell they're talking about. Yeah. So, but of course they don't. No, because that would mean that you wouldn't have to get in your car and drive down to the local dealership and spend an enormous amount of your hard-earned. So what in fact they do, they call, there's three things you'll see and hear when you're trying to buy a chain in the specification stuff. And when you read them online and you read them on the websites of the manufacturers, you'll see these same terms crop up time and time again. The first one is called the pitch. And you'll also see some gobbledygook numbers, which are usually fractions of an inch, or the translation to European in millimeters. And it doesn't make a lot of sense because they're very small numbers and rather difficult to understand. So the pitch is how will it fit my chainsaw's head sprocket? So you'll see the word pitch, and there'll be a chain. Let me show you a good example if I can find one. So here is a Chinese import. Oregon and Still pretty much controlled the chainsaw manufacturing market for donkey's years. And I think, personally, I know it's slightly cynical, but I think that part of the reason there's a vested interest in keeping this gobbledygook and technical jargon, simply because if it's complicated, there's a bigger barrier to entry, and it stops competitors getting in and making cheaper chains than they do. And here in the UK, if you want to buy an Oregon chain for my little Still, my 18-inch bar, it's about 22 to 25 quid, even 26 quid for one chain. Now that's not an insignificant amount of money. These Chinese knockoffs are 2 for 12 quid. So they're about a quarter the price. And, you know, they're not as good as Oregon, but they're bloody close, you know, and they're easily good enough for farting around as a weekend warrior. I think if I was chopping California redwood trees down, I might have another attitude to it, but they're very good and they're easily good enough. And so you got to try and decipher what's on the back of the packet so you know which one to buy. And you can see, actually, I don't know if you can see that. Does that show up?
The bag, we might be able to see it a bit easier. The reflect. Yeah, the bag's kind of reflecting a bit there. So yeah, let's have a look at that, because that looks like the kind of jargon I've been wrestling with. So
yes, it really is quite hideous. So if you look, it says the pitch, the gauge, the item number, which is a manufacturer specific thing, the file size, and I'll come on to that later. Yeah. The sharpening angle. Well, on this Oregon alone, there's 3 different adjustments for sharpening angle. So that's also really difficult to understand what it means. It says the file position, that's another thing, another sharpening angle. And the depth gauge. Well, the depth gauge is another, it's nothing to do with the sharpening bit, the sharp bits, the cutters. The depth gauge is another piece of metal on the chain, which I'll come on to later, which determines how deep the chain cuts into the wood. If you don't take down what they sometimes you'll hear called the rakers or the depth adjuster, the chain will just skate along the top of the log. Wow. If you take more off the raker and you go deeper and you grind more off the top of the raker, the chain will pull into the log better. You don't want it to go too far, so the raker's governing the scoop of cut, if you like. So each shaving is bigger if you grind the raker further down. And you will want to, that will help you to go faster because there's more sawdust coming out of the log per second than there is if it's got a shallower raker. But if you go too deep, it goes a bit out of control and, you know, it's more dangerous. So just to demystify that for once and for all, the word gauge means, the word pitch means how it will fit your chainsaw's drive sprocket. And in fact, technically, what the pitch is, it's the measure of the distance between the teeth of your drive sprocket on your chainsaw. And there are about 4 different ones that cover all the chainsaws in the universe. And they are, so the 1/4 inch is the smallest, 3/8 is the most popular, these are in inches, 3/4 is the largest, and pitch is important because the drive sprocket must be the same as the chain. So although it is sort of accidentally a measure of the sprocket, if you like, it's actually referring to the distance between the cutters. And it's technically measured as, here's a chain. So the pitch, which is also the size of the teeth on your chainsaw sprocket, is defined and measured as the distance between any 3 of these rivets here. So there's rivet 1, rivet 2, rivet 3. So you take that distance from the center of that rivet to the center of that rivet and divide it by 2. Don't ask me why they do that, but they do.
Because they're offset, aren't they? There's these 2 are closer together.
Yes.
There's 2 that are closer together.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So you're taking the average, basically.
So you're taking the average distance. So you divide by 2, so we get, because that isn't the middle, is it?
Got it.
Right.
No, it's not. You're right. No, exactly. So you could choose the wrong. Yeah. So that's what you're doing is you're taking the distance between those 2 and dividing by 2, and that is essentially the very same as the distance between the teeth of your chainsaw sprockets. And as I say, there are about 4 standards, of which 3/8 is the most common. Right. Ironically, Neil's is 3/8, isn't it? Yeah, yours is 3/8. Mine is 0.325 of an inch. There isn't even an 1/8 version of the fraction for you to describe it as. So it's described in the paperwork as 0.325 of an inch.
Right. So they've gone with a decimal. Maybe.
So they've gone with a decimal because there isn't a sensible fraction to describe it. Yeah. So it's a real minutiae type thing. Yeah. Okay, so that's the pitch. It's 3 rivets divided by 2, and it's the same as your chain sprocket. So it's a measure of the size of the chain, really, for want of a better term. Then you've got gauge. So the two most important terms you're going to hear is pitch and gauge. Gauge is, so the gauge is, here's your chainsaw again, okay, and that's the cutter.
Right.
You're looking at the top of the chain there. So
Yeah.
can you see that?
Well, yes, just about. I can see the colour. Yeah.
That's the cutter.
Right.
And at the underside of the chain, you've got these little dog's teeth at the bottom.
Yeah.
Right. These little triangles here.
Yeah.
That's on the bar side of the chain. So that's fitting in the bar.
That's for the sprocket to catch, right?
Exactly right. These are called the drive links, and that's the quantity you have to count to find out how many drive links there are.
Oh, okay.
And that's the measure of how long your chain is. My still takes 68. Your battery-operated Greenworks takes 62.
62.
So it's a slightly shorter chain, and yet they're both 18-inch bars, interestingly.
Yeah.
So that shows how important the drive link is, because if you just thought you could go on 18-inch bar, you'd be scuppered. Now, the other thing about the drive link is that it has a thickness. And in other words, in that plane there, how thick it is. And if you measure it with calipers, which I did last night and covered myself in oil in the process, you'll find that it is, of course, the same thickness or very marginally less than the thickness of the channel that's in the bar on your chainsaw, in which it travels round and round. And that's the gauge. It's really important that you get the gauge right. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4 typical ones, which are 0.4. These are all in inches, all in fractions of inches. 0.43, 0.05, 0.058, and 0.063. And Neil, yours I think is 0.050 from memory, and mine is 0.063. So again, both 18-inch chains, 18-inch bars, and yet both the thickness of your drive link and the number of drive links is different to mine.
Yeah.
So superficially, you might think, oh, well, I've got still 18-inch. Can you borrow one of my chains, Rob? You know, and
Yeah.
you'd be, and the worst thing is that maybe suppose the pitch was the same and it would fit round your sprocket, and then you took it outside, it would fly off, or there's a high risk it would, because it's not fitting in the bar properly.
And you're talking about the groove that these dog's teeth travel in, aren't you?
Yes, exactly. So if you look at the bar closely at a chainsaw bar, there's obviously a groove.
Yes.
And it is in that groove
It's traveling.
that these little teeth,
Right.
and I've now got it upside down, so these little teeth go in the groove of the bar,
Right.
and then they hook around the sprocket.
Was that what you were measuring the thickness of then? Those little.
Yes. So if I'm going to the dealer, or if I'm wandering around the countryside helping my other wood turning friends do things, and they want to buy a new chain,
Right.
I'm going to be asking for this kind of data. And this is actually an Oregon chain. This fits my particular chainsaw, which is a Still MS251, or is it a 261? No, 251, beg your pardon. So I have a Still MS251 with an 18-inch bar, and if I buy an Oregon chain for it, this is what I'm going to be looking for: a 22 BPX with a 0.325 pitch and a 0.063 gauge with 68 drive links.
Right.
But if you want to buy one, Smudge, you're going to be looking for a 3/8 pitch, a 0.050 gauge, and 62 drive links.
Yes.
Yet we both have 18-inch bars.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this seems to follow the Husqvarna. I'm looking at the cover of the chain I bought, and it has a lot of makes, but the I think, isn't it Husqvarna and Still that kind of.
Yeah, Husky and Still are the big boys.
Right. Yeah.
They dominate the professional forestry industry. There isn't another chainsaw to touch them, and it's a grudge match. It's a Microsoft versus Apple debate as to which one you love. All the Husky owners hate Stihl, and all the Stihl owners hate Husky, more or less.
Oh, really?
They all, well, not quite, but they swear blind that theirs is the best.
Loyalty, yeah.
And obviously they're wrong because Stihl is the best. Kidding.
Yeah.
Right, so here is an Oregon chain when you buy it from the shop, okay, a box.
Yeah.
And yet again, look on the back. It's gobbledygook, Mr. Blackadder. So there's a whole bunch of incredibly unuseful at all.
And incredibly upside down as well.
Ah, yes, good point. Well done, yes. Glad you spotted the deliberate mistake.
Yeah.
That, believe it or not, somewhere in that massive table of completely and utterly illegible technical data is everything you need to ask for what your chainsaw requires.
Right.
But it's cleverly disguised.
Yes.
And camouflaged in a sea of rubbish. So,
yeah.
That looks like what was on the back is in the actual Oregon book, which is there to help you.
Yes, it is. It is. In fact, if that, well done, Smudge. What a great segue into the 520 sharpening universe. Because if you look at the 520, that's this thing, by the way. The Oregon chainsaw sharpener, which we're going to come on to in a minute, because we're going to show you how to sharpen.
And for the purposes of demonstration, I should just point out that you have removed the safeties on that machine just so that we can see what's going on, right?
And I would never do that normally. We've only done that for the purposes of the camera.
Right. Just thought I'd put that one in there. Yeah.
Oh, look, there goes Elfin Safety, that well-known Christmas elf. Right, so here we go.
Oh, that's where that comes from.
Is that the right way on this time?
Yes, it is. Yes. And
right. So
some of it. Yeah.
This, believe it or not, is taken from the manual of this little beastie.
Right. That's the thing you sent me, isn't it?
By an incredible stroke of luck, it is the same as on the back of the Oregon packet. So Oregon have brilliantly managed to realize that their tabulated chainsaw chain data is confusing on one of their bits of product wear, so they just distribute it everywhere. Well done. Nice work.
Yeah.
So just in case anybody was thinking of being educated. So I'm being unfair to Oregon. It is, I think most of their, probably in fairness to them actually, most of their customers originally were forestry. They were in the professions, so they probably did understand all of this stuff. It's only as us weekend warriors have grown in the last 20 years, as the cost and availability of these beautiful pieces of equipment have become more in line with our affordability, that it's become more needy for us to understand what's going on. Anyway, so now when you come to sharpen it, and by the way, so you've now bought your lovely chainsaw, whether it's an electric, petrol, or like Neil's got a battery job, and you're coming to cut some wood up for the fire or for a barbecue or to impress your friends at the weekend. And so off you go, you get your log, you zing, 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 and everything's going, and my goodness me, there's sawdust everywhere, and they're great big chips, and it's brilliant, and you just think, wow, this is a doddle. This goes through like a knife through butter. And then you get to the bottom of the log, and you didn't think to put it on a little other log to get it off the ground before you started cutting it. And it's circular, and it might have rolled off, so you probably just cut it on the ground. That's what most people do anyway. Yeah. And then what happens, of course, is when the chain emerges at the bottom of the log, it sometimes digs a bit into the ground. Not much, and it's only soil, so it doesn't matter, but it digs a bit into the ground. And of course, the problem is it does matter. It matters a hell of a lot. Yeah. And what happens, and even if it doesn't dig into the ground, sometimes in the bark itself, there's tons of bits of grit and dirt and muck and snails. And of course,
you're describing this perfectly. That hit a rock, and I didn't have a spare. And after that,
really common.
Yeah, after that, it wasn't making those nice sort of confetti chips anymore. It was making sort of a sludgy sawdust coming that was coming out, and then the chain started to jump off the bar. So which is
I don't want to hear that. You never heard that, viewers? You won't. Don't worry. Your chain's not going to. Well, actually, the whole point of this is to stop that from happening.
Exactly.
But,
yeah, it's actually much more dangerous then, clearly to me.
It is, yeah. It is really dangerous. Although luckily, touch wood, I've not had anything, go wrong yet.
Yeah.
I have had a chainsaw company come in, and I've got a garden with lots of trees in them. Every now and then, one goes wrong, so we have to have it cut down. Nothing to do with my wood turning supplies at all, and I deny anything to that effect. So we had a tree surgeon come in about 2 years ago and took out a great big maple tree in our garden, and he wandered up to me with tattoos all over him, and he said, "Yeah, Rob, yeah, no, don't worry, mate. I'll get that down for 300 quid, piece of cake." And I just saw his arm. There was just this massive scar from shoulder to his wrist. And I said, "Oh, occupational hazard?" And he went on to describe what had gone wrong. And then he lifted his trousers up and showed me another bloody great one on his thigh. Oh. So this guy was basically like a living shark-bitten, gnarled tree man who, in fact, had been bitten by chainsaws that had gone wrong. And so I've seen firsthand the damage it can do, and that's not in the face, that's just on the limbs. So you have to take it seriously, folks, because those things really can bite you.
Yeah.
And they bite you when the chains come off, funnily enough, because you've then got a lot of metal sharpie things flying through the air. So you have got to take this stuff seriously. And what happens when you blunt them? When you hit the ground, you get muck on them and you get dirt to them. They've only got to hit. Don't forget, this thing's flying around really fast. And if there's a rock that's wedged into the ground, every single cutter is going to hit that piece of rock, and every single cutter is going to be blunted more or less equally.
Yes.
Probably the first one will take the worst of it, but the rest of them aren't going to be that far behind. So one ding into the ground and your chainsaw's blunt. And then a lot of people just buy a chainsaw, they've got one chain, and then that's when this problem starts, because they've either got to sharpen the chain they've got, or they've got to go and buy another one. And that's when they get into trouble figuring out which chain to buy, and then often just give up because it's just too much like hard work. So you can sharpen it yourself, and this is where that data about the file to use comes in. And so when you buy a chainsaw, the chap in the shop will almost certainly, if he's worth his salt, attempt to sell you.
Yeah, unless you buy it on Amazon, of course, and then
unless of course you buy it.
Then it just
the chap in the sky won't try and sell you.
Customers who purchased this saw also purchased.
Hey.
Yeah.
Yes. I've just dropped something.
I did actually pick up it's like a little file kit.
Yes.
I think it's down in the garage. I thought I was going to bring it up, but I forgot.
Yeah, and basically that's what I'm doing here. Look, so here is my still file kit.
Right.
And all it is, and by the way, if you can be bothered to do this, it is the best way of sharpening a chain. So you've got a file, a round file, which of course has to be specified for your chain. Right. So it's got to be the right pitch, because it's got to fit in the hole of your chain.
Yes.
And then you can either put it into a little handle like this and just do it manually, or a lot of them have these little file holders which allow you to align it with the. And this is where the black magic gets much worse, because I gave up doing it by hand for the simple reason that it just takes so long. You're only meant to file each tooth a couple of times, maybe 3.
Right.
And you file right into the corner of the what they call the top plate, which is, so when you're filing, if this is your chain, which mine's got all.
Yeah. They always.
So, and this is, you can see this one's been ground quite a lot, because can you see there's not much left of the teeth? Right. There's a tooth there.
Yeah. Turn it sideways more. We'll be able to see that a bit better.
Like that. How's that? No?
Yeah. That's
the top plate there.
Yeah.
And the grind is at 30 degrees. Can you see? It's not ground like that. It's ground like that. Mm-hmm. And so when you put the file in, you have to follow that angle.
That angle, yeah.
and you sort of grind away from the tooth in that direction.
Oh,
and you do it about 3 times, and you do it to each one the same amount, because you want even length top plates as well. You want each tooth to have the same length on the top. If they're uneven, the chainsaw will be jerky when you put it into the wood. Right. So, but really, this isn't about hand grinding today. That's not what this video is about, because I can't bear it myself. I'm afraid, you know, at the tender age of 57, I find life to be significantly too short to spend it hand grinding chainsaws, when Mr. Oregon and his incredibly inventive crew have come up with this to save me for having to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't bother to grind them by hand now, but I did at the beginning, and it was painstaking. It really was. In fact, I'm almost tempted to say that if you're stuck with grinding them by hand, maybe send them away to a service, because you can get them ground for you by people who've already bought one of these and charge for it. And they charge in the UK about £8 for one chain grind. Right. So you can see it's not cheap either. And when you're wood turning and you're grinding your own, you're harvesting your own wood, you get through a heck of a lot of chains, and it becomes cost prohibitive to do them in a service, and too time consuming to do them by hand. But if you've got spare £300, then this puppy is just brilliant. Because it has 3 different angle adjustments, so it can get the right angle into the tooth, it can get the right top angle, and there's another thing called the head angle that it can get into as well. But so, without boring you too much, there's a chain end on, and the tooth you can see, and there is very little left of this. You know, I've ground it probably 5 or 6 times already from new. Shall I see if we can find? Let's just show you a new chain.
Right.
Yeah, look at that one. You can see. Can you see how long the cutters are in that? Or yeah, there's one. Look there. Look at the length.
Yeah.
You see how long that cutter is? Yeah. That's a brand new chain that hasn't had any grinding yet. Yet this one is probably less than half that cutter length. Can you see? That's the cutter there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you know, it's the other one was twice as long as that. Yeah. But that's the bit that you're cutting. That's the bit you're grinding. You're basically just taking a sliver of metal off the end of the angled bit of that top plate, in order to create a fresh new metal surface that's sharp, multiplied by the entire chain.
Brilliant.
That one's probably near the end of its life, so you probably get 6 or 7 sharpens out of it, and then depending on how much you've had to take off, I suppose, there comes a point where you're just going to throw it away, right?
Yes, exactly, and I'll show you where that is as well, so you know how long you can go. But can you see the witness mark? That's what I'm trying to get to here.
Yes, there's a...
Right, so that's important then. So the witness mark is the final point at which that tooth can be sharpened.
Right.
All right, so shall we, are we ready to do some grinding then, mate?
Yeah, sure.
Let's, and you were gonna talk me through. I'll spin this round so you can see it.
First things first, okay?
Right.
You've got your spec of your chainsaw, have you not? Right, so don't worry, mate. I've got it. I've already got it. So, are you ready?
Yes.
So, ladies and gentle spoons, we are going to sharpen Neil's chain, nay, Smoogleville's chain. And right now, we're assuming for the purposes of this demo that that is completely and utterly green. Okay. So he's just got the machine for the first time, and in fact, that is the case, is it not, Smudge?
Yeah, I've not.
It's literally brand new. If I can see looking at it, there isn't a speck of dust on it.
No, it's lovely, isn't it? So, yeah.
Believe me, that won't be long. That won't be the case for long.
It's not look this good for long. Yeah.
So I think what's important here is that we start with what chain you've got, because that's going to be the starting place of everybody else in the universe that does this, right? Yeah. Yeah. They're going to have to start with what chain you're using. And you just happen to have an Oregon S62. That's what's written on the packet. Yeah. That's what the weekend warrior is going to find when they go into the store and buy one. It's going to be an Oregon S62 for your particular chainsaw. Its pitch is 3/8 inch.
3/8, yeah.
Its gauge is .050.
0.050.
Its bar length is 18-inch, which, as we already know, is completely and utterly useless for the purposes of this. But what is important is it's got 62 drive links.
Yep.
So that's its length in technical terms. So we know the spec of the chain. Now we can look up what that chain is in the manual that comes with the machine. And the manual that comes with the machine is, 6 million tons thick, of which 9/10 of that is in Chinese, Japanese, German, and Bulawayan. And there's a Thai section in English, a very useful language, by the way. And if you look at that, now it is worth mentioning actually that when I looked up Oregon S62, here's a real gotcha, folks. When I looked up what Neil's chain says it is on the packet, which is an Oregon S62, that didn't exist in the table of values that are in the Oregon manual for what chainsaw type have you got. I thought, hey up, this is a bit of a problem because, poor sucker is going to look up for the chain he thinks he's got and he's not going to find it. So I zipped out on Tinternet and I discovered that the Oregon S62 is a chainsaw type in Oregon's universe of gobbledygook. And its type is a 91PX. And I just happened to find that by pure chance by surfing around the internet, basically. So if you look at the 91PX in the Oregon 520 Sharpener lookup table, you find that in fact it does exist. It is, and I've cut out the bit in the manual that's relevant and I've labeled it with some other bits and pieces, which you're seeing there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so what I'm showing you here is this is now translating what your chain is in a shop for someone to buy it to what you need to set your machine up to grind at. So it's the angles and all of the technical stuff.
And this is somewhere in this instruction manual, is it?
Yeah, it's a table. If you open it, it's on page, I don't know, it's not that far in. That's it. Yeah, there you go. So that page on the left, and that's what this is. This is just a cutout of the line that's relevant on that page, okay?
Oh, okay.
Yeah?
Right.
So what that's saying is that it's a 91PX, and can you see I've ringed it?
Oh, I found it. Yeah, there's a 91PX.
It's a 91PX. Its grinding wheel width is 1/8 inch. So that's the grinder. That's the thickness of because when you buy this machine, viewers, if you can look in the background, you can see the one that's installed in the machine, the little orange, pink discs, the actual grinding discs.
Yeah.
If you see the two on the bench or 2 or 3, those are different thicknesses because you remember we talked about the difference in the thickness of the chain. Yes. Well, each of those discs is for one of those different thicknesses so that you've got the capacity to sharpen any chain on the market with this tool. Okay. Right. It just so happens that Neil's here, young Smoogleville, is 1/8 inch. And that's why he has very brilliantly installed the 1/8 inch wheel on his grinder. The next column along is the angle, the 30-degree one in my little picture there. 30. The next one along, 30 degrees, is the vice angle. So what this is remember I showed you the cutter itself in the sharpener, and it's called the name for it, again, bit of jargon, is the top plate. Okay. Right. And it does make sense. It's the top bit of the cutter. It's called the top plate. Right. And if you look at the top plate, when you look at a chain top down, you'll find that it's at an angle, obviously. It's not square on, it's at an angle. And that's so that when the cutter cuts into the wood, it's a shear, what they call a shear cut. And it means it takes less stress on the cutter and it doesn't take a massive shaving out with every single bite. It takes an angular shaving out and it sort of slices through the wood and it's less stress. So, and that angle is 30 degrees. And in fact, for a very large quantity of chains, it is always around 30 degrees. Yeah. And that's for a cross-cut chain as well. In other words, you're cutting the limb of the tree across. If you want to do planks of wood, to make lumber from which you then can dry and make furniture or do things with, you would cut down the tree longitudinally, and that's called a rip cut. Yes. For that, you can use a chainsaw still, and I do in fact, frequently. That's what I do all the time when I'm making blanks for wood turning. But for that, you generally use a different grind of 10 degrees, and that's a more specialist thing. So we're not going to cover that today. That's another whole other story.
Yeah. That's a lot flatter then, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, yeah. It's a lot flatter. Now, for this case, it's a 30-degree angle. So Smudge, you want to, but don't set the vice angle just yet. But that's, you're right. Where you've got your hand, which is on the little locking knob underneath the vice. Yeah. It is the pointer. Can you point your finger to the pointer so that people know what you're talking about?
The pointer on the front here?
Yes, exactly. So the red knob that's almost obscured from view, that's underneath that vice, determines how tight that vice is. And then when you swivel it, the pointer will take you to a 30-degree mark, okay? And that's what you're wanting to do.
Yeah. And he said something about right away.
Yes. No. Yeah. So you aren't going to have to worry about that, because your chainsaw, your chain, I beg your pardon, doesn't have a down angle. There's another. There are 3 adjustments on this machine. The one we've just done is the 30-degree top plate vice angle, which we've done 30 degrees. The second one is called the down angle, and if you look at your vice, in fact, if you just undo it again and just show the folk what happens, undo it, and can you see that it's got a sort of camber on the actual turntable? You can rotate the vice at 90 degrees to the axis of the clock. So if you put your hand on the right-hand side of the chain, as where you see where your left hand is, yeah, exactly, and now flip it so that it goes towards your bench table. Yeah, that moves in another angle away from you. If you I see what you're saying. Yeah, in this direction. That's it. You've got it. That's it. Okay. You've got it. Right, and it goes the other way as well.
It rocks. In other words.
It goes the other way as well.
Yes.
Right up. Yeah. There you go.
Now I don't need to do that though, do I?
You don't need to do that because your chain doesn't have a 10 down angle. Mine does. So again, more variation.
Gotcha. Yeah.
What that does is it's just a compound angle. So when the grinding wheel presents itself inside the little gullet of the cutter, sometimes there's a chamfer on that angle as well. Right. For some chains, not this one in particular. So it's now. So that's that. So you just set that at the middle point, and then it comes. Then we come to the last one, which is called the head tilt, and the head tilt is simply how rocked over the grinding wheel needs to be in order to get inside the gullet. Right. If it wasn't at the right angle, it would cut a different shaped gullet, basically. Yeah. And if you look at the scale of that is at the back. That's it. You've got it.
So.
And yours wants to be, wait for it, 55 degrees. And that's because the 55-degree mark is a really common one for most chains, and that's why they've, made a noticeable mark there. But very importantly, you must make sure that the bit that is aligned with the 55-degree mark, in other words, the pointer, but it isn't a pointer; it's a line, isn't it? It must be the one that says 0 degrees, not 10 down. Because you can also, this is really difficult to see, and this was a horrible gotcha. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. Yeah, it's 2 angles there, and so it's actually on the one that says 0. So the bottom.
Yes, yours wants to be yours wants to be the bottom one. Yeah. Not the one that says 10 down.
10 down. Gotcha. Yeah, and I've tightened up on that, so
that's it.
So that should now be, although I'm on the wrong type of link there. If I bring this to here, that should actually, that's pretty close. That's
so now you want to get a Sharpie, and you want to get a Sharpie as opposed to a Blunty.
Yeah. So I'll get this sucker in there like that. And let's start with this one, seeing as it's already there. And now I've just blacked it. Right.
Cool. So what you want to do now is make sure that the stop you've got 2 more adjustments to make now. Have you got it on the 0° point? The 0 pointer is at 30.
Yes.
Okay. So you don't have to worry about right away and left towards you, because you don't have to angle your table, okay?
Gotcha.
That's only for a 10 down, which your chain doesn't have, so that's easier actually. So what you do need to do is, you've marked the thing. Now what you want to do is bring the chain down into the gullet. No, actually, sorry, before you do that, first of all, first of all, yeah, that's the depth stop. So what you want to do with that is obviously go to the bottom of the gullet, but you don't want to take out any of the floor of the gullet,
Right, so
because you're weakening the chain when you do that.
Yeah.
If you grind part of the gullet, you're then making the chain more likely to snap in operation.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah.
So yeah, that's just shy of that now then.
Okay. Yeah, don't worry, because when you start grinding it, you're going to see the fresh metal, and you'll know if you haven't gone far enough. And you'll be able to adjust that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't show it on the cameras because of the angles I'm at. But yeah, I've got that just shy of the bottom. I don't think it's touching it.
Don't worry, because when you start grinding, you'll soon know. After one tooth, you'll know.
Yeah.
Because if there's a load of bare metal that's beneath the floor of the gullet, you'll see.
Right, so I've checked that, and yeah, that's just shy, all right, of the gullet.
That's good enough for now. Don't worry about it.
Right.
If it's just shy, it's good enough, because you can refine that after a couple of grinds. The next thing you want to do is just make sure that the limit stop is about in the middle of the tooth, because if it's not, if it's too close to the front edge, you're going to grind the end of that off. I'm telling you now.
A man, spoken from experience. In fact, that's catching that bit. I've got to push it this way now.
Yeah.
Right.
And you want it to grind the minimalist amount of metal. Basically, the more you take off in this pass between the more you take off in the grind in terms of that limit stop.
Yeah.
The more of the tooth you're going to grind away, and therefore the shorter the chain's going to last. In terms of, you might get 6 or 7 grinds out of it if you do it well. You'd only get 4 grinds out of it if you do it badly, or 3 grinds.
Yeah, and I've got that.
Out of tooth.
So what I'm now doing is I'm adjusting that till it's just starting to push on that disc.
Yes.
Right? And it's not hitting the back guide, and the depth is hard to get.
Sludge, you need to do that calibration with the vise locked. It's open at the moment. That's it.
Oh, crud. Well, that's easy.
Too mad on that.
That's easy, yeah.
Lock it quite hard with it underneath the knob. When you lock it, don't push it too hard. You just need to, that's it, that's fine. You don't need to go right to the middle. If it's locked, it's locked. It's not going to go anywhere. And you'll find if you push that too hard, you can't go quick because you're forever unlocking it. Once you get used to this, you'll fly through a chain, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
You become like a robot.
Right.
But the reason I said lock is because the adjustment is different when it's locked. It pushes the chain upwards.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? Yeah. So now I'm just pushing the chain that way toward the cutter. And I think I'm filming that close. There's a little knob just in the way, actually. Not sure the camera's seeing it, but...
You find it's more difficult to adjust when the vise is locked.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and as soon as I let go, it's twanged on me.
Yeah, because you really should adjust it when the vise isn't locked, and then check to see if it's good when the vise is locked.
Oh, I'm with you. Yeah. Okay. So we pull that back a little. No.
If you lock the vise sort of half locked, it's more or less in the right position.
Yes.
And it still allows a bit of adjustment, and then I tighten it up one more. It's the quarter turn idea.
Yeah.
It allows it to be in its final position, but it's still adjustable.
Yeah, I think it's there.
Yeah. So now switch it on.
Okay.
Put your goggles on.
Yep.
Switch it on. It's got a light as well, which is really helpful because you can see a lot better.
Check everything. So we don't want to run that too tight. You just want to pinch that up. I see what you're saying. that's adjusted. I'm going to lock it down right there, and then then we switch her on, and right, here goes. Let's see if I've got that set up just right. I'm going to try and keep my whoops.
Yeah, now, hang on, Smudge, before you go too mad. When you grind, you don't want to draw the temper of the metal, right? You don't want to glue it.
Yes,
so
yes.
what you want to do is go ding, 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 4 little knocks rather than a whacking great monster. That's it, like that.
Gotcha. Right, and then release.
Now have a look. Have a look in the... Get a torch or anything and just have a good look in the gullet. You want to see clean metal all the way around the face, preferably with relatively small amounts of burr.
Yeah, I really can't get my head in there easily.
That's why I took my guard off.
Well, it's the cameras in the way.
Oh, it's
I'm sort of surrounded here. I can't really see. But judging by where the sparks came out, actually I can, there's no reason why I can't lift that out and look at it.
No, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, that way.
As long as you don't change the settings, it will drop right back in.
Yeah. No, that's bright, shiny. Yeah.
And if you just pull your finger up against it carefully, slightly, it should pull on your skin. It should feel sharp.
Yeah, it does.
Not like it's going to cut you, but it should just feel a bit sticky, It's particularly when you've got 3 or 4 or 5 done and you run your fingers up against them carefully, obviously you don't want to cut yourself. Yeah, that's looking good.
It's touched on it, yeah.
I can certainly see bare metal.
Yeah.
I can see freshly ground metal. The light's reflecting off it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, definitely. I can see it's done its thing. So now I actually go 2 links.
You do. You miss a link because obviously you're going all the cutters on the left and then all the cutters on the right.
Right. Okay.
After you've swiveled the turntable around.
Yeah. So let's do another one.
Just check just bring the saw down and check that it is indeed fitting in the gullet in the right place.
I can't without maladjusting it now.
Does it feel like it's right?
It does, yeah.
Yeah, okay, then carry on.
Yeah, I don't know, it might take I hope it's not taking too much off. We'll see. Okay. So I'm hoping I'm getting deep enough as well. Alright, so that's that one. Then and again. So next we're going to flip this to the other 30 degree and do the other side, right?
Correct. Have you done all links?
Yeah, I'm back to my marked one. So I'm going to.
So now all you need to do is flick it through 30 degrees.
Yep. Mark.
And Bob's your uncle. You might have to frig around with the limit stop again. In theory, they should all be the same, but then I find that they never are once you've flipped it through 30 degrees.
Right, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because it's further away. You're actually going to be hitting a different part of the...
You'll find that this way is much nicer as well. When it's grinding into the gullet and out, it doesn't leave as big a burr, and it feels a nicer grind. So one way is a nice way and the other way is a not so nice way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and some people do a hack where they, you know that motors don't care which way the thing is spinning. And sometimes if you spin the wheel and then turn it on, it will continue spinning the way you spun it, as it were.
Okay.
So,
Love it.
sometimes you can do that and make it spin in the right way, because they only are meant to spin one way.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So now that's not quite letting me in. So I think that's about right. No, actually that isn't. That's going to take off too much. You're right. I'm going to have to adjust that.
Yeah. If it's not letting you in, you're going to take off too much. You should be in, but just scraping the edge.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I do.
Yeah, I've got.
And if it's not letting you in, you're going to take about 0.5 millimeter off.
Now I got it. Right, here goes. Let's. So I've adjusted that so it's just letting me in, but I can feel it touching the back edge of that actually. So although I'm on 30, so it might not have been ground brilliantly itself. Right, let's lock that down. Can you see what's going on? And yeah, that is a nicer feel, isn't it?
Yeah, you're getting some good sparks. And you should start to see some swarf build up on the bridge of the machine there.
Well, that's weird. I've got two lefties here. I've got two in succession that are this angle.
Oh yeah, that does happen from time to time. It's probably where the chain was joined.
Yes, I expect. Yeah.
Where the loop was joined.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember, little bursts, not one great big grind.
This one's been absolutely mullered. This one's gonna...
Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, when you start, the first tooth you choose should be the most chewed up.
Messed up one, yeah.
Because since they've all got to be the same length to keep the chain balanced, typically you're going to be grinding the most off the most chewed up, and then everyone else has to match that new grind. Because if you think about it, if one tooth is longer than the others, it's going to attempt to cut all the wood itself, and each of the others won't reach. That's why it's important for them to be the same length.
Right.
Yeah, these are. This is where I hit the rock, I would say, without doubt. Yeah, you can see these are gnarly. It does seem to be. I do seem to be taking off enough though. So. But worst case, I'll have to come back round and do both sides again, because you don't want the alternate teeth being different lengths, do you? You said something about feeling that when you're cutting it.
Yes, that's right. You'll feel it. It will feel imbalanced when you're cutting.
Yeah.
And what you can do is just try it. See how it feels.
Yeah, that's what I'm. Yeah, I'm going to go and get a log in a minute and mount this up on the old Greenworks. And because
how many chains have you got now? Is it just 2?
Just 2, yeah. Yeah. I'll probably get some more now. I know what to get. Right, let's take this. This is the brand new blade I put on it, and I haven't really used it yet. I used it for one cut, but I'm going to take that off right now. Put my newly sharpened original on there and see what happens. So that was the Oregon, and that was back to making nice confetti again when I was running it. Yeah. So now the cool thing is, if you only have one chainsaw, you could more or less leave it set up, couldn't you? Now let's see. It cuts that way. That's right.
Don't forget to have the teeth facing forward, obviously.
Oh yeah, I was just checking that. Yeah. On the top, they face forward. Yeah.
And also, Smudge, always reverse the bar every time you change the chain.
Oh.
And then they wear evenly.
Oh, now I don't think I did that. Let me do that.
So you should have the writing upside down once, and then
right, going upside down now.
On the same side.
Good tip.
Good tip.
And then it wears evenly.
Yeah, because there's bound to be some bias on that, isn't there?
Yeah. Don't forget also, when you install a new chain, they stretch like mad for the first few goes.
Right.
So you take the spanner with you on site.
Oh yeah, I take a bucket now and I carry this thing with me.
Yeah.
Now this one has already stretched out.
Yes, it will have done because it's been used.
Because it's the original, and that was like. Now, here's something else I was going to have you share with our viewers, mate. Tightness of chain. What's your guideline on that?
It's a bit of a feel thing with me now.
Right.
But the first thing to say about tightness of chains is they're always a bit tighter than you think they need to be.
Right.
Generally, if you pull the chain once it's got the cover, and if you obviously not in the position you've got it now, because otherwise it's gonna come off the sprocket. So once you reinstall the cover, the chain wants to pull in. When you've got it now, you want to adjust the set screw so that the links all pull in.
Yes.
But when you then pull on the chain, it does want to be able to pull out a bit.
Yeah, about 3-4 mil.
Not so that the drive link is completely free of the bar.
Yeah, I could, if I pulled hard enough, get it free.
And then when you put, so leave it like that, that's not too bad. Then when you reinstall the cover and tighten it, and then try it again, because it tends to tighten a bit from where it is now when you reinstall the cover, I always find.
Right.
And also make sure that the oiling hole is free of gunk, because it has a tendency to clog up with sawdust.
Yeah.
And if that happens, oil doesn't get to the chain bar, and then it overheats in no time and blunts like mad.
Actually, one step I have missed that they recommended on the Oregon video, and this spanner doesn't, was to oil it. Yeah, soak it in oil.
I don't know.
Or soak it in gas overnight is another good thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
Just have a little bucket of gas with a lid and leave it in gas.
Yeah, now I'd already put the cover on, so I haven't cleared the oil hole, but I did clean this out when I put the new chain in, so it should be all right.
Run it through with your fingers. You ought to really put gloves on.
Yeah, I've taken the battery out.
And how does it feel generally? Does it feel incredibly stiff, or?
It's moving. Let me get a glove here.
And
I can move it.
okay,
Now it seems loose. That's actually loosened.
yeah. So there you are. See, that's why it's really important to pull it through a few times, because if it's going to mess around, it's going to do it now. So to tighten it. No. You've got to undo the bolt.
Loosen them a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have them that tight.
Right. Do a quarter of a turn.
Yeah, this is actually not quite the right size, this thing.
Did you not have one with it?
No, they didn't supply it.
All right. Now tighten up again, because it always changes when you tighten the bolts.
Yeah.
It generally gets tighter, I find.
Yeah, that got actually looser. There you go. Okay.
Now pull it through the sprocket again a few times. I can see that's tighter.
Yeah, it feels tight as well.
And now pull it away from the thing a bit and see. And
I can still get it clear of the slot, you know.
maybe right. Just turn it on again. Just stick the battery in and just run it without it, going in anything.
So, all right, let's take a slice off, shall we?
That made short work of that.
Yeah. Look at the sawdust.
Yeah. Proper big chips.
Real,
Confetti.
Confetti.
and that did make short work of that. So that is, I would say that Oregon mate has passed the test. Had we not had the overhead of the learning curve and the filming and cameras and stuff like that, I could have probably set that up. Now I know what to do, and know how to find the specs on here?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Brilliant. It really is.
That is a nice tool, mate. Good recommendation. Yeah, I think that's going to be an asset. Please click the like button if you found this episode helpful, and we'd love to have you as a subscriber, as there's always something interesting going on in the Smoogleville Workshop.
And so, you know, you'll see it all get cut together into a show. And if you want to be in it, I'll use one of these scenes because this is being filmed. So, so you could just do a wave or something, you know, whatever you want. Yeah, it's getting off the camera. Yeah, that's it. There you go. Perfect. I'll make sure I cut that in for you.